London, a city of 8 million people, one of the most competitive property markets on the planet, and, on the 14th of June 2026, the unexpected epicenter of an international controversy that fused the worlds of real estate, geopolitics, human rights law, and parliamentary democracy into a single, explosive weekend. The event was called the Great Israeli Real Estate Event, a property showcase, a chance for prospective buyers to explore investment opportunities. But for over 100 British lawmakers, Amnesty International, the Mayor of London, and dozens of human rights organisations, it was something else entirely. It was, in their words, apartheid and annexation with a sales pitch. This is the story of how a property fair brought Westminster to a standstill, and what it tells us about the collision between global investment, international law, and the United Kingdom's role on the world stage. On the surface, the Great Israeli Real Estate Event 2026 was unremarkable, one of a series of international property exhibitions aimed at prospective buyers interested in homes and investment opportunities in Israel. Events like these are common in cities like London. The UK has long been a hub for international property investment, attracting buyers from across the globe with its stable legal system, its liquid financial markets, and its cosmopolitan, globally connected diaspora communities. The event was organised by a group called My Home in Israel and was billed as a roadshow targeting diaspora investors. British Jewish buyers, in particular, who might be interested in property across a range of Israeli cities: Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem, Herzliya, Netanya, Ashdod, Ashkelon, and more. So far, so standard. But it was the early promotional material that set off alarm bells. Before the event's website was updated, promotional material had invited would-be investors to explore residential opportunities in areas including Gush Etzion, a settlement block located not within Israel's internationally recognized borders, but in the occupied West Bank. Under international law, the West Bank is Palestinian territory, occupied by Israel since the 1967 Six-Day War. Israeli settlements built on that land, where over 700,000 Israeli settlers now live, are considered illegal under the Fourth Geneva Convention and have been condemned by the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, the European Union, and the United Kingdom itself. Gush Etzion is one of the largest and most established of those settlement blocks. For Palestinians and their advocates, it is not an area of legitimate real estate opportunity. It is occupied land. When campaigners, journalists, and human rights investigators noticed those references, the storm that followed was swift, loud, and impossible to contain. By the second week of June 2026, the controversy had reached the floor of the House of Commons. Callum Miller, the Liberal Democrats' defence spokesman, raised the issue directly during parliamentary questions, calling on the government to ban the Great Israeli Real Estate Event outright. His argument was pointed. Properties in illegal settlements in Gush Etzion, he said, were being marketed alongside properties in Israeli cities. Palestinian land, in his words, was being advertised, bartered, and sold on the streets of London. Then came the letters. First, a letter signed by 98 members of Parliament and the House of Lords, including 64 from the ruling Labour Party, was sent to Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper. It called on law enforcement to investigate the event's organisers for potential breaches of UK sanctions legislation and money laundering law. Allowing the event to proceed, the letter argued, would not only be inconsistent with current UK government guidance on settlement-related economic activity, it would stand in opposition to the government's obligations under international law. Then, just days before the scheduled event, that number grew. By Friday the 13th of June, more than 100 parliamentarians from both the House of Commons and the House of Lords had put their names to a letter addressed to Foreign Secretary David Lammy, a remarkable show of cross-party concern. urging the government to block the event entirely. The letter warned that the exhibition was linked to the sale of land in Israeli settlements considered illegal under international law, and that proceeding with it could contribute directly to further settlement expansion in occupied Palestinian territory. Outside Parliament, campaign organisations were mobilising with equal urgency. Amnesty International UK issued a damning public statement condemning the event in stark terms. Their words were characteristically uncompromising. "This isn't a property fair, it's apartheid and annexation with a sales pitch." The Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the Muslim Association of Britain, and numerous other civil society organisations joined the chorus, writing directly to Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood and urging her to use her legal powers to prevent the event from going ahead. The International Centre of Justice for Palestinians, a UK-based legal organisation, went a step further, sending a formal legal notice to the Edgware United Synagogue in northwest London, which investigative reporters at Middle East Eye had identified as the event's venue. The legal notice placed the synagogue on notice of serious legal and reputational concerns regarding its role in hosting the exhibition. The location itself had been kept deliberately vague. The event's website said only that it was coming to London. No address, no postcode. But journalists pieced together the details, and once the venue was known, a protest was formally organised by groups including the Palestinian Youth Movement and the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network near the synagogue's entrance. To understand why this event generated the legal and political firestorm it did, we need to step back and examine the legal landscape that underpins the entire controversy. Under international humanitarian law, specifically the Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949, an occupying power is prohibited from transferring its civilian population into occupied territory. The International Court of Justice, in its landmark 2004 advisory opinion, and again in its July 2024 ruling, confirmed that Israel's settlement activity in the West Bank is incompatible with international law. The United Kingdom government has consistently stated that Israeli settlements in the West Bank are illegal under international law and constitute a fundamental obstacle to a two-state solution. That is not a fringe position. It is the official position of the British state. But what does that mean in practice, on British soil? This is where it gets complicated, and where the government's response to the London property event became a study in carefully chosen language. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, when pressed in the House of Commons on whether the government would ban the event, did not offer a simple yes or no. Instead, she deployed the language of moral pressure and legal investigation. The government, she said, would warn any businesses against associating themselves with potential breaches of international law and with becoming involved in a process that is undermining peace and security in the region. She went further. There was, she argued, a moral responsibility on businesses, and particularly on charities, where the government held additional regulatory powers, not to support illegal settlements. She confirmed she would be meeting with the Charity Commission to discuss the need for tougher enforcement over dealings with illegal land in the West Bank. The government also issued a broader statement. Expansion in the West Bank is wrong. We will be bringing forward updated guidance in the coming days, giving greater clarity to UK businesses on how to avoid ventures which support these illegal settlements. On the specific question of whether the event would be banned, Cooper said the government was pursuing that particular event and that if breaches of UK law were found, they would be pursued. In practice, what that meant was this. The UK government did not have a straightforward legal mechanism to simply ban a property exhibition on the grounds that it may promote overseas real estate linked to illegal settlements. The relevant powers around sanctions busting, money laundering, and trading with entities subject to financial restrictions exist, but applying them requires evidence of specific transactions, not merely the promotion or advertisement of properties. That legal gap between moral condemnation and legal prohibition was precisely what critics found most frustrating. Throughout the controversy, the organisers of the Great Israeli Real Estate event maintained an unwavering position. They were not selling West Bank settlement property. They were not breaking any laws, and the allegations against them were, in their words, ridiculous. A spokesperson for the event was blunt in their denial, telling the Jewish press that all exhibitors, without exception, would provide information only about properties and projects within the Green Line, meaning within Israel's internationally recognised pre-1967 borders. The references to Gush Etzion that had appeared in the event's earlier promotional material, those had been removed from the website. The organisers described the controversy as motivated by anti-Israeli and terrorist supporters, seeking only excuses to attack Jews in general and the State of Israel in particular. The event's CEO, Emmanuel Vatari of the Emmanuel Group, one of the event's sponsors, had briefly posted a list of participating companies on social media before taking it down. Journalists at Middle East Eye managed to capture that list before it disappeared. What it revealed was a more complex picture. Among the listed participants was the Tivuch Shelley Real Estate Agency, which advertises properties in Ma'ale Adumim, a major Israeli settlement deep in the West Bank, east of Jerusalem. Another participant was Africa Israel Residences, part of the Africa Israel Group, which has historical involvement in construction projects in settlements in both the West Bank and East Jerusalem. For critics, this was precisely the problem. Even if the event's promotional language had been cleaned up, the underlying network of companies involved had documented links to settlement construction and sales. The question was not merely what was advertised on a website. The question was what conversations, transactions, and relationships would take place behind closed doors. On Friday, the 12th of June, with the event just 48 hours away, Mayor of London Sadiq Khan was directly challenged during a Mayor's Question Time session by Green Party leader and London Assembly member Zach Polanski. Polanski's language was sharp. The event, he had previously written in a letter to the Mayor, was coming to London to auction stolen Palestinian land to the highest bidder, and proudly promotes the sale of land in settlements like Gush Etzion in the occupied West Bank, marked as illegal under international law. He warned that many Londoners were rightfully concerned that an event promoting land confiscation and the destruction of homes was set to take place in their city. Khan's response was unambiguous. Israeli settlements in the West Bank are unjustifiable and illegal under international law, the mayor said. They are deeply tied to the ongoing displacement of Palestinians. I condemn any attempt to sell property in the settlements in the West Bank, be that in London or anywhere else in the world. I share concerns about the Great Israeli Real Estate event taking place in our city, which I oppose. For Polanski, the mayor's condemnation resonated with the earlier stand Khan had taken against the DSEI Arms Fair, the biennial Defence and Security Equipment International exhibition held in London's Docklands, which Polanski had explicitly referenced in his letter as a precedent for mayoral opposition to events perceived as ethically compromised. But the mayor, like the Foreign Secretary, stopped short of issuing or demanding an outright ban. Condemning the event was not the same as stopping it. In a significant development that broke in the final days before the event, reports emerged that the original venue had withdrawn from hosting the exhibition. The Great Israeli Real Estate event was, according to Jewish News, forced to relocate after its initial venue pulled out amid the mounting pressure. The event was still expected to go ahead, at the Edgware United Synagogue, but the logistical disruption was a sign of just how much pressure the campaign had generated. The International Centre of Justice for Palestinians had already sent a formal legal notice to the Edgware United Synagogue in northwest London, raising what it described as serious legal and reputational concerns about hosting the event. The letter was an attempt to place the venue on formal notice, to ensure that if the event went ahead and was later found to involve illegal activity, the venue could not claim ignorance. Meanwhile, on the streets of Edgware, a protest was planned, organised by the Palestinian youth movement, the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network, and a coalition of civil society organisations. The protest was scheduled for the intersection near the synagogue. The Metropolitan Police confirmed it was assessing potential criminality associated with the event. Now, and this is where we speak directly to you, the investors, the property professionals, and the financially curious viewers who follow this channel. What does all of this actually mean for people operating in or around the UK property market? The short answer is this. This controversy is not just a political story. It is a regulatory warning shot. The British government has now made clear, through the Foreign Secretary's public statements, through the threatened engagement of the Charity Commission, and through the promise of updated guidance for UK businesses, that the legal and reputational environment around investment in Israeli settlements is tightening. For anyone managing funds, advising clients, or operating in any part of the international property investment space, particularly where portfolios extend into the Middle East or Israel, the message from Westminster is unambiguous. Do not assume that geographic distance insulates you from UK legal exposure. The UK sanctions regime against entities linked to West Bank settler violence has been expanding. In the same parliamentary session where the Great Israeli Real Estate event was debated, Foreign Secretary Cooper confirmed that new sanctions were being applied to illegal settlers in the West Bank. The trajectory is towards greater enforcement, not less. If a UK-registered company, UK-based charity, or UK national were found to be materially facilitating the sale of land in illegal settlements, whether through advertising, brokering, financing, or legal advice, the legal risk is real. Money laundering legislation, financial sanctions compliance, and the Proceeds of Crime Act all carry significant penalties. For property professionals, the practical takeaway is straightforward. Due diligence on the geographic and legal status of overseas property is no longer optional. What is advertised as a residential development in a particular region may, on closer examination, be located in territory whose legal status is contested under international law. The responsibilities that flow from that are not purely moral, they are regulatory. Step back even further, and this story is about something bigger than one property exhibition. London has long prided itself on being the world's open city, a place where capital flows freely, where international communities find a home, and where commerce trumps ideology. That openness is a genuine economic strength. It is also, as the Great Israeli Real Estate event made viscerally clear, a source of deep political tension. When any international actor, whether a government, a corporation, or a private promoter, chooses London as a platform, they are choosing a city subject to British law, British regulatory oversight, and British political accountability. The Mayor of London is accountable to 8 million people. Parliament is accountable to the nation. And increasingly, those accountabilities are being applied to events and activities that touch on some of the most contested geopolitical questions of our era. The Great Israeli Real Estate event was, in some respects, a microcosm of a much larger question. What are the limits of London's openness? The DSEI Arms Fair has faced similar protests for years. Climate campaigners have targeted the financing of fossil fuel projects through City of London banks. Pro-democracy activists have protested against Gulf state real estate investments. Each of these controversies involves the same fundamental tension: London as a global financial centre and London as a city with values, laws, and a political culture that cannot simply be switched off at the venue door. That tension is not going away. If anything, it is intensifying. As the global economy becomes more multipolar, as geopolitical conflicts become more economically entangled, and as the UK government seeks to define its post-Brexit identity on the world stage. As this script was written, the event was still scheduled to take place on the 14th of June 2026, today, if you're watching this on the day of publication. But the aftermath will continue long after the doors close and the brochures are packed away. The Foreign Secretary has promised updated guidance for UK businesses on how to avoid ventures that support illegal settlements. That guidance, when it comes, will have real-world consequences for any UK company operating in the Israeli property market, whether they work with developers, lawyers, mortgage brokers, or property managers. The Charity Commission has been put on notice, with the Foreign Secretary personally committed to meeting with its leadership to discuss enforcement. This matters for any UK charity with fundraising or operational links to Israeli entities that touch on settlement activity. The Metropolitan Police confirmed they were assessing potential criminality associated with the event. Whether any charges follow remains to be seen, but the precedent that UK law enforcement will at least assess such activity is itself significant. And in Parliament, the coalition of more than 100 lawmakers who signed letters demanding action is a political constituency that will not simply dissolve after this weekend. They will be watching the government's follow-through. They will return to this issue if the promised guidance proves toothless. The Great Israeli Real Estate Event of June 2026 will be remembered, whatever else history makes of it, as the moment when a property fair forced an entire parliament to confront the intersection of real estate, international law, and moral responsibility. For property professionals, the lesson is clear. Geography is not neutral. The legal status of land, whether it lies within a recognised border or across a contested one, is a material fact, not a political abstraction. For investors, the warning is equally pointed. Due diligence now extends beyond price-to-rent ratios and yield forecasts. It extends to the legal and geopolitical context of every asset on your books. And for those of us who watch the UK property market for a living, who track its cycles, its regulations, its international connections, this story is a reminder that property is never just about bricks and mortar. Property is about land. Land is about power. And in a world where the question of whose land it is remains bitterly unresolved, the market that trades in it can never be entirely separate from the politics that surrounds it. London will continue to be one of the world's great property markets. It will continue to attract international capital, international buyers, and international controversy. The question, as it has always been, is not whether London engages with the world. It is how it does so, and on whose terms. I'm your name, and this has been UK Property Compass, helping you navigate the market, the law, and the world behind the headlines. If this video helped you understand what's happening at the intersection of property and politics, please subscribe, leave a comment below with your thoughts, and share this with anyone who needs to understand why the property market is never just about property. We'll see you in the next one.